This first question asks us to identify structures in plant cells. So F is pointing at the jelly-like substance, which is the cytoplasm. G is pointing at the little discs within the plant cell, which are the chloroplasts. H is pointing at the vacuole, which contains the cell sap to support the plant cell. In the next part, we have to label where chromosomes are found, which is, of course, in the nucleus, which is this black shaded circle, which we should label K. And the cell membrane is the inner rectangle, so we should carefully use a ruler in the exam to label this L. And this type of plant cell, which contains many chloroplasts, is a palisade cell. The next part of this question asks us to describe the differences between the first cell and the cell that was placed in concentrated glucose solution. If we go back to the first picture and compare it to the second picture, clearly the cell has shrunk and this vacuole has decreased in size. So the vacuole has become smaller. Next, we're asked to compare the processes of diffusion and active transport. Notice how it's 3 points, so you need three comparative sentences. So first sentence is on the difference in definition. So diffusion is about particles moving from high to low concentration, and active transport is going to involve the movement of particles from low to high concentration. And I'm just jotting down bullet points because of time restraint, but in the actual exam, you should write sentences. For example, the first one would be diffusion involves the movement of particles from high to low concentration, whereas active transport moves particles from low to high concentration. And number 2 would be that diffusion does not require energy. It is a random process, so it does not require ATP energy, but active transport does. And diffusion does not require membrane proteins, but active transport does require membrane proteins called carrier proteins. So each sentence will have 1 point that refers to both processes to score 1 point for the sentences made in the response. So make sure that you talk about diffusion and active transport in each point to score all the points possible. And the next question is about how water moves in and out of cells. When you see the word water, immediately think of the process osmosis, which is the movement of water from high to low water potential. Again, I'm just jotting down key points here so that you know what you need to include for these 3 marks in a structured response. And you can mention how it has to be through a partially permeable membrane, which only lets certain particles through. And the next part requires us to identify the solutions that each red blood cell was placed in. So first, we can see that the red blood cells in the first picture are perfectly normal. They aren't shriveled, they're not bursted. Therefore, they are immersed in an isotonic solution of equal concentration to the concentration within the cells. So the first cells are immersed in blood plasma, whereas the second group of cells are shriveled. You can see that for the cells to become shriveled, water has to move out of the cells. And we know osmosis goes from is a movement of water from high to low water potential, meaning that the external environment is low water potential or very salty. Therefore, this is referring to the very concentrated salt solution. And the last group of cells have clearly bursted. So this means that water entered the cell, and since red blood cells do not have a cell membrane, they cannot withstand the turgor pressure. So these cells will burst when water moves into the cells from high water potential to within the cells. And high water potential means that it is pure water, as stated in this question.